everybody. This is our first Facebook Live interview. We're sitting in one of the YWAM Honolulu offices, and I'm joined by Mark Smith. Mark, thanks so much for being with us.
Glad to be here.
So Mark is here doing some study here in Hawaii, and he was gracious enough to stop by Jess's Biblical Core course and give a lecture the other night. Mark is a professor at the College of Idaho, is that the name of it? Mm-hmm. And also an archaeologist. So I met Mark in 2008. He spoke in our School of Biblical Studies, and he taught the book of Acts. And then when we were on staff here with YWAM Honolulu with the SBS, he taught on the period of the Kings. I think he might have come and taught Joshua as well. And he brought artifacts. You're the only teacher that's ever brought tangible things for us to hold that were really old, which was a ton of fun. So you just kind of gave a impromptu lecture about biblical archaeology. And so not only are you a professor, you're also an archaeologist, which is amazing, and an author. And so we're going to talk about some of that stuff today, but we super appreciate you taking time out of your trip here to bless the BCC with all of your knowledge. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing here in Hawaii right now.
Well, part of it is going over to Kona and lecturing for a school over there called Counterculture School. But the other part of it is doing research for another book I'm writing on ancient Hawaiian temples.
Nice, nice. So what does that include temple-wise? You're kind of out and doing some visits right now, doing some drone footage?
Yes, so one of the keys to the book is the ability to do aerial photography, because you can't see these temples very well from a ground level. They look more like a pile of rocks from the ground, but when you go up above, you can get a sense of what the whole structure looks like. So I've been going around to each temple that I'm including in my book and doing aerial photography of it, and also trying to get the context where it is, because often it's just a beautiful, beautiful place, and when you can see the temple and the forest and the beach and the ocean all together, it gives you a sense of the grandeur of the place. So that's the photography portion, and then the research portion, all that fun stuff like state archaeological libraries and meeting with cultural interpreters and that kind of stuff.
Nice, nice. So for our viewers that have no clue about the history of Hawaii, what are some interesting things that they can kind of take away about the temples that are here? How old are they, and when was the last time they were used, and what were they used for?
Oh, so Hawaii, ancient Hawaiian religion, we know a fair amount about it because, partially because of the archaeology, but also because when early visitors came, including people on Captain Cook's voyage where he ultimately was killed over on the Big Island, we encounter pictures and accounts of religious rituals going on. Turns out the cook probably got killed because he got himself in the middle of two different rituals, and one of them considered him a god and the other one considered him in the way of another god, and that created certain problems, and it was all surrounding a particular temple in Kealakekua Bay that is still there. So that's one example. As far as your bookends question about dates, as part of what I'm working on is the dating of the oldest Hawaiian temples, and the bulk of them. So the oldest right now looks about to be 1200-ish AD. The bulk of them seem to be in the 16th, 17th centuries, and some of the big ones and last ones were in the 18th century. They continued to be in use until 1819, when the particular event took place. Kamehameha II ate food with his mother and the Queen Mother, and that was a violation of Hawaiian religion and basically destroyed the kapu system. So that then a lot of the heiau, or the temples, were destroyed or abandoned. There is a resurgence of Hawaiian religion these days, although it's got similarities to the ancient version, but it's also different.
Hopefully we're not sacrificing anyone.
Well, exactly. The human sacrifice element, the real steep social hierarchy, the idea that you killed for stepping in the shadow of Ali. Those things are not part of the modern deal, thank goodness.
Right, right. Yeah, I was amazed just doing a brief study into the history of Hawaii that human sacrifices were still happening in the early 1800s. That just seems way too near for there to still be killing people ritually to please the gods. That seems quite crazy. So, in your lecture the other night, you mentioned something about how just archaeology helps illuminate. Can you kind of discuss that?
Oh, by the way, should I be looking at you or?
No, it doesn't matter. I think we're good. Yep, I think we're good. Yep. So in that lecture, you just mentioned that a lot of people say that archaeology proves the Bible true.
Right, or proves the Bible false, and you'll get people set up different cases, and they'll say this proves the Bible true, this proves the Bible false, and I think that whole idea of proving something true or proving something false is just not a helpful way of thinking about it. Archaeology doesn't prove anything. Archaeology provides evidence that helps you understand an ancient culture. And if that ancient culture happens to be one that biblical authors were involved in, or the Bible was writing about, the biblical authors were writing about, then it's nice when you have connections. It's so, and this is not my language, I borrowed this from Bill Deaver, a great archaeologist. He said, I think the best way to talk about the relationship between archaeology and written sources, including the Bible, would be that they mutually illuminate one another. They shed light on each other so that archaeology can help you understand a text better, and the text can help you understand archaeology better, including, for example, where is this place? Usually there's not a sign that you find in archaeology saying this is the name of this place. You can use written sources to figure out, okay, we know the place is around here and this fits this particular description, therefore it's probably the text, it's probably the place that is mentioned in the text. So text can help understand the archaeology can help understand the text. And to me, because I'm a historian, the more evidence we have for any historical event, any historical person, any historical movement, the better. Our probability goes up of our understanding of the whole thing. So what does happen many times is you will find something on the ground that has a direct connection to the text, and therefore it specifically touches the text, and usually in a way that corroborates the text, right? It gives support, so that the text mentions a particular person's name, and you find an inscription with that name on it. It mentions a particular battle, and you find an Assyrian inscription or artwork that depicts that particular battle, and those confirm each other in a sense. Now we have two pieces of evidence, which makes it more probable that these two people groups were involved in this particular battle in the ancient world. And sometimes it'll challenge your interpretation. Sometimes archaeology will make, you might think these two things happened at the same time, and then archaeology gives you, well, wait a minute, maybe there's another way of looking at this that we hadn't considered before, right? And so it's very common that archaeology will cause you to change certain interpretations of the text, and similarly, the text can get you to rethink your interpretation of the archaeology.
Can you think of a specific piece of archaeology that has challenged one of your kind of preconceived notions? Is there something that jumps out?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned in the class, the one that I wrote about extensively in my book is it appears now that we have discovered the place where Jesus' trial took place. One of the things that's always bugged a lot of biblical interpreters is this business of, the week before he is killed, Jesus comes into town amidst a great fanfare, all kinds of people welcoming him in large numbers, and then, a week later they're chanting, "Crucify him." What's the deal? Right? Why would they change like that? I think by finding the specific place where Jesus' trial took place, we get a whole new picture of what that trial was like, and that basically all our Hollywood depictions are probably wrong. And when you read the text in light of the place, you start noticing a whole lot of things in the text that nobody noticed before. For example, multiple references to the chief priests not wanting to arrest Jesus in public because they were worried about his many followers. In other words, they understood that Jesus was very popular among the Jews of Jerusalem, and they were not. Well, in Jewish sources, they're well known for, that particular family is well known for its corruption and its oppression of the common people. So they were very unpopular among the general populace of Jerusalem. Jesus was very popular. This is why they had to have a Judas to tell them how they could get to Jesus in a place where he didn't have a lot of followers around him.
Interesting.
Then, when they actually had him, where do they take him? In the middle of the night, they take him to their own private residence. None of the prisons around town or whatever. This is all hush-hush. It's something that they completely can keep under their control. Then all the Gospels emphasize that it was very early in the morning when Jesus was taken to Pilate. Everybody else is still sleeping off Passover from the night before. Nobody knows what's going on. This is not a public thing. They just go right down the street from where they live to where Pilate's praetorium was, and they go take Jesus with them to trial. Then the place is very small, and it's enclosed. It's about the size of my living room. It can't handle more than about 50, 70 people at most, and all the people who are there are either the extended family of Annas and Caiaphas or their closest supporters, a few slaves, hangers-on, maybe Peter, maybe John, who are, an unnamed disciple is mentioned in the book of John as being in the courtyard when, at Annas and Caiaphas' place. That suggests that they may also, one of them or both of them may also have gone with the group to where Jesus' trial was. But basically, this is a hand-picked group. So they're in an enclosed situation. It is not a public trial. It's private. It's hush-hush. There's guards on the outside. So you don't have a big mob gathering around chanting "Crucify." You have the hand-picked lackeys of the Annas and Caiaphas family. They're the crowd who's having these chants. In other words, there is no tension between the people of Jerusalem heralding Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem the week before and the people chanting "Crucify him." A week later, they're different people.
That's so fascinating. And that's all because of, was that a personal dig that you were on where you think you found that building? Or
No,
is that
I
just,
wish.
okay.
I wish. It's a group from a friend of mine from the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
Charlotte, actually. And yeah, and basically it's to give the quick reasons why it is the right place. One, in the Gospel of John, there's this really interesting reference to the chief priests could not go into the praetorium of Pilate because they had a job to do that day. It's their biggest job of the year. They're the chief priests and they're leading the people in the worship of Passover. So they have to be very much in a purified state. So they cannot enter a Gentile home. In fact, all homes before Passover have to be purified of leaven that happens to be around. They could run into anything that could make them unclean in a Gentile space, and that would render them unfit to do their big job for the year. So they told Pilate, we can't go in to that place. So they ended up holding the trial at a place where they were in public space, but still they had the trial. But all the Gospels also say that Jesus was tried in the praetorium of Pilate. Well, how can you have it both ways? How can they be outside the praetorium and Jesus be inside the praetorium? And how does all this work? Well, they found this little gate just on it's actually the western wall of the city. Today, the western wall of the old city of Jerusalem. And it was a little gate that went right into the praetorium, which is the courtyard of Pilate's palace. I think it was for taking out the trash because it goes right out the wall and goes right into the Hinnom Valley, which is the city dump. And so there's a little gate area was there, and so the gate, the little courtyard of the gate, is a double-walled courtyard. Is public space outside the praetorium, and then there's a little doorway and a small staircase leading into the praetorium. So the priest could be outside the praetorium, Jesus could be inside the praetorium, and Pilate could hear the case right in the doorway at the top of the stairs between the two. But this little courtyard is enclosed, it's got doors on both sides, and it's a very small area, so that helps. And also the Gospel of John tells us that 6 times during the trial, Pilate went in and out. In and out of what? Well, whenever he goes in, he speaks to Jesus in the praetorium. Whenever he goes out, he speaks to the chief priests. So what is he doing? He's basically turning around. He's turning around to speak to Jesus when he's inside, then he turns around and speaks to the chief priest on the outside, and it all makes sense in that particular context. So all that in and out stuff, I've never heard of an interpreter making sense of that before.
Right.
Now it all makes sense in light of this particular space. And it's the only space like that that's around the whole area of the praetorium. So pretty decent probability we've got the right
That's amazing.
place, and so that just, it changes your interpretation quite a bit.
Right.
And then you start to take that and you say, oh, so this is about a particular family, and they're protecting their particular interest. Why is this family so hostile toward Jesus? And you start to go backwards and you realize, oh, the big moment is when Jesus turns over the tables in the temple, and it's specifically members of that family who, as soon as they see that, they resolve to kill him. And when Jesus says, my house will be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers. When he says you, who is the you? That family. And he's pointing directly at them because this was the source of their wealth. They're some of the wealthiest people in Jerusalem. They got wealthy at these tables, basically ripping off the common people in the name of God. I can explain that in some detail, but when you understand that their status and their prestige and their wealth were all being challenged by Jesus in that moment, for them to uphold the status quo and retain their authority, they need to get rid of it. And so that's what sets up the whole thing. So it's very much a family ordeal.
Yeah. And what's the name of the book?
The Final Days of Jesus.
Final Days of Jesus. Awesome. I will put a link to that in the comments for this so that you guys can check that out. And we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to check and see if the sound's coming through okay, and we'll be back with a couple more questions. I'm going to ask you about dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs? Really?